So here's the setup for 90-90 hip stretch in external rotation. We're going to make two 90-degree angles with the knees, knee in line with the hip, ankle in line with the knee, and then we're going to recreate that same position, if accessible to you, with the back leg. So this is also called pinwheel stretch because it looks like a pinwheel, or 90-90. From this position, if you are able to lean your torso forward and find a stretch in the hip or the underside of the front leg, then this would be the position you will work this mobility exercise from. If you have any pain or pinching, or this position is just too uncomfortable, you can take a yoga block and you can prop it up underneath your hip to elevate you just a little bit. And sometimes this can help to make this position more comfortable. You can also use a second yoga block out to the side to rest your hand on so that you can keep your torso nice and upright. So give these two positions a try and see which one is better for you. Now, for a lot of people, 90-90 just doesn't work. You might feel a lot of cramping or pain in your back leg, or maybe even in your low back, or maybe even in the front of the hip. So I'm going to give a third option here for those of you to try if this position is not accessible to you. So for that, you would take one yoga block, and this would be to prop up your head, and you would come to a wall, and resting your head on the block, you would bring one foot onto the wall, and you would take the opposite ankle and cross it over the knee, coming into this figure 4 position. Now, when we do our pails and rails exercises, every cue is going to be the same. So if you need to take this position, there's absolutely no problem with that. The most important thing is to find a comfortable base position from which you can work. Okay, so I'm going to come back into 90-90, and we are going to find our passive stretch. So from this position, you're going to lift yourself up off the floor and reach your hips back toward the wall behind you, and then sit down on that hip. Now, if you have any pain in your back knee, you can always bend this knee a little bit more. It doesn't have to be at a perfect 90-degree angle, and you might even want to bring that back leg forward a little bit. So there are a lot of ways to modify this base position so that it works for you. So don't feel like you have to be stuck here in a perfect 90-90 if you're experiencing any kind of pain or pinching. Okay, so we've lifted up, we've reached our sit bone back, so now the hip is extending back away from the front knee. And from here, I'm going to lift my chest, and I'm going to lean my torso forward without rounding in my spine until I feel a nice stretch in my left hip. Now, once you find that position, I'm starting the timer, so we're going to hold our 2-minute passive stretch, and you're going to find your deep diaphragmatic breathing, inhaling slowly, exhaling slowly, and your job is just to hang out here, hold this passive stretch for the next 2 minutes. And as you stay here, I'm going to describe what your pails and rails contractions are going to look like. So after you've held this passive stretch for 2 minutes, I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, and you are going to ramp up for your pails contraction or your push. What you're going to do with your front leg is imagine you had a scale underneath your ankle and your foot, and I want you to press your foot and ankle down into that scale. Don't do it yet, but it's as if you were going to do this with your leg. So you're trying to rotate that foot down into the floor, almost as if you're going to lift your knee off the floor. That's your pails contraction, is pushing out of external rotation as if you're coming into internal rotation. Then you're going to switch into your rails contraction. Your rails contraction or your pull contraction is as if you were trying to lift that foot and ankle off the floor. You won't be able to move your leg, but it's as if you are trying to do this with your leg. Okay, so we have about 30 seconds left in the passive stretch. And what we're going to do to prepare for our pails and rails is we're going to take a deep breath in. We're going to pack that air down into our abdomen, and we're going to irradiate. So I like to flex my toes back, feel that tension through the whole body. And we're going to start to ramp up that pails contraction in 3, 2, 1. Start to press that foot and ankle down into the floor as if you were trying to push the floor out from underneath you. Ramp up that contraction slowly until you get to your greatest, safest effort and hold here. 10 seconds pressing foot and ankle down into the floor. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now rails. Imagine you're pulling your foot and ankle off the floor. Knee is going to stay down. It's like you're pressing your thigh down, but your lower leg is trying to lift up, and hold for 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly relax your leg and see if you can lean forward into that stretch and find a little bit more passive stretch. Come back to your breath. Slow inhale. Slower exhale. And again, we're just back to that nice passive stretch for the hip. You're going to feel a lot happening during these pails and rails, and this is going to feel very fatiguing on the muscles in your hip, but this is how we expand the range of motion first, and then you're building strength and control through these pails and rails contractions, and this is the mobility work. Okay, so it's time to do our second set of pails. So I want you to take a breath in, pack the air down, irradiate, and start to ramp up your pails contraction, foot and ankle pressing into the floor. Imagine a volume knob. You're turning it up slowly. Push more, more, more until you get to your greatest, safest effort. Hold here for 10 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Rails. Try to lift the foot and ankle off the floor. It's not going to move, but do your best. Torso stays in the same position as you lift, like you're trying to rotate into more external rotation for 3, 2, 1. Slowly relax your leg, but don't back out of your stretch. And see if you can maybe lean forward a little bit more. Back to that deep breathing. Let's relax the nervous system for another 20 to 30 seconds before our final round of pails and rails. Good. So you might feel a little bit of burning happening right now, a little bit of fatigue. That's good. That's a good thing. And the nice thing about this is that you can modify it for the day. So if you're feeling pretty tired or your nervous system is exhausted from a lot of activity, maybe you haven't been sleeping well, you can always take the intensity down but still do your mobility work. And on the flip side of that, if you're feeling really energetic and like you want to get a really good workout, then you can go ahead and ramp that intensity way up. Okay, last set of pails and rails. Big breath in, pack that air down, irradiate, and start your pails contraction. Push. Imagine you have a scale under your foot and ankle and you're trying to press down as much as you can into that scale. Try to bring that number up as high as you can while keeping your knee on the floor. Find your greatest, safest effort and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7. You might be shaking a little bit. That's okay. 4, 3, 2, 1, and rails. Try to lift foot and ankle off the floor. Keeping that knee down, keeping the outside of the thigh down. Hold. 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly relax your leg. Oh my goodness. Try to find a little bit more passive stretch if you can. Come back to your breath. Slow inhale. Slower exhale. Relax your nervous system. Okay, so we did our 3 sets of pails and rails on this side, and now we're going to do lift-offs. So I want you to, again, stay in this position. Don't move. I'm just going to show you what I want you to do. As we go into lift-offs, you are going to come out of this position by coming down onto your forearm, that same side forearm as the leg that you just worked. And your first thing is you're going to see if you're able to lift your foot and ankle off the floor. If you're not able to lift it off at all, then I want you to keep extending your torso out. You could even come down side lying. You can take the top leg and straighten it out if you need to, until you're able to actually lift your leg off the floor. Okay, so we want to be working with a small range of motion. So I'm actually going to back myself up, so I don't want to be able to lift my leg too much. And I'm going to keep my ribs from collapsing down toward the floor. As I create this tension, I'm going to do 10 lift-offs, picking my foot and ankle up off the floor, rotating from my hip joint. Okay, so find a comfortable position. You can still be in this bent knee top leg position, or you can straighten the leg out. We're going to lift up through the ribs, take a breath in. Pack that air down, irradiate, and lift off for 10. Small range of motion. 9, 8, 7, 6. Knee is staying pinned to the floor. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and slowly rest that leg down. Whew, that is a lot of work. Nice job. We're going to take it now to the other side. So whichever variation you did on the first side, I want you to use that same variation on the second side. So if you need to prop your hip up with a block, go ahead and do that. If you need to lie down and cross your ankle over your thigh, then go ahead and take that position. And if you're coming into your 90-90, find that position on both legs. Make sure that it's comfortable and that you're able to stay here. We're going to lift ourselves up, stretch our tailbone back to the wall behind us, away from the front knee. Think about lengthening this line of tension here. From here, shoulders back. I'm going to lean my chest forward until I find that stretch in this front hip. So I'm feeling it right underneath my glute and the side of my hip. And I'm starting my 2-minute timer here. Deep diaphragmatic breathing. Slow inhalation. Slower exhalation. So just hang out here and relax. As you're taking your passive stretch, I'm just going to do another reminder for you on what your pails and rails motions are. Right now we are in external rotation. Your pails contraction, or you can think of it as your push contraction, is going to try to push you out of this position. So if I'm in external rotation and I push my foot and ankle into the floor, it's going to look like I'm doing this type of motion. On the flip side, my rails contraction is going to look like I'm doing this motion, lifting foot and ankle off the floor. Another good visual is to think about that scale underneath your foot and ankle. When you pails, you're going to try to make that number jump up as high as you can, putting as much force down into that scale while keeping your knee on the floor. And on the rails contraction, you're going to try to make that number as small as possible without actually lifting your foot and ankle off the floor. So get ready for your first pails contraction here. You're going to take a big breath in. Pack that air down, irradiate, and start to press down into that scale that's under your foot and ankle. Start to slowly turn that volume knob up. Once you find your greatest, safest effort, I want you to hold there for 10 seconds, pressing down. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rails. Imagine you're lifting your foot and ankle off the floor, holding it here for 10 seconds. Lift, 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 rotating from your hip. 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly relax your leg and see if you can find a little more passive stretch. Back to that deep breathing. And something that's really important to note is that the ankle may try to do a lot of this movement, especially when it comes to rails. And you really want to think about those pails and rails contractions coming from the hip joint. So that's where the rotation is coming from. We don't want to be thinking too much about the ankle or the foot or the knee, because those joints can act as compensators. So we want to just make sure we're thinking about, am I using the muscles surrounding my hip to make this movement happen? Round 2, big breath in. Pack that air down. Start to ramp up your pails, pushing foot and ankle down into the floor as if you were going to push the floor out from underneath you. Find your greatest, safest effort and hold 10 seconds. Pushing, pushing, pushing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rails, lift, opposite direction. 10-second hold. Imagine you're making that scale as light as possible. 0.0001 on that scale. Hold 3, 2, 1. Slowly relax your leg. See if you can maybe lean your torso forward a little bit more. Back to your diaphragmatic breathing. We are almost there. We have one more set of pails and rails. We're going to do our liftoffs and then a little bit of a cool down. And believe me, you will feel this tomorrow. This is work. This is glute work. And this is also work that is going to enhance the glute work and the lower body work that you're doing in the gym and just the movements that you're doing in life. So very, very valuable mobility exercise. Last set of pails. Take a big breath in. Pack that air down, irradiate, and start to ramp up that pails contraction. Starting slow, turn up that volume knob, pressing foot and ankle down. Push and hold. 10 seconds at your greatest, safest effort. Hold here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rails. Try to pull foot and ankle off the floor, rotating out from the hip. Hold here, lifting. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly relax. Find your last little bit of passive stretch. Back to your diaphragmatic breathing. And then we're going to move into liftoffs. So spend a few more seconds here. I'm just going to describe where you're going with this. Same thing as last time. So you're going to walk your hands out to the side, maybe coming down onto one forearm or just moving the hand away from you. You can also lie all the way down. It's really about at what point can you lift this leg off the floor into external rotation. We want maybe just like 1 to 2 inches of movement. So if you come all the way down and you're able to lift off half of a foot, that's not really going to be all that challenging. We want to be working at your end range of motion. So I want you to walk yourself out. Again, you can straighten this top leg or keep the knee bent. And here we go for 10 liftoffs. Keep the rib cage lifted. Big breath in. Pack that air down and irradiate. Lift off for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Thigh is on the floor. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And slowly bring that leg back down. Excellent job.